A few years ago, I was lucky enough to meet a wonderful trombone player named Seymour Green, who is one of the last surviving members of the enormously successful Irving Berlin show called This is the Army from the early 1940s. The show was made into a Broadway show, a film, and then eventually toured around the world during World War II, helping keep spirits up through the war effort. Seymour had amazing stories, like being fired at during the show by snipers in the Pacific, being in Italy when Vesuvius erupted, playing in a band with Jack Teagarden. They had to improvise stages to perform a Broadway musical in all sorts of crazy wartime settings, in a time when they would have to dig an orchestra pit to put a 25-piece orchestra in under the stage for their performers. With this show, he worked with many famous people, like the young actor Ronald Reagan and the great songwriter Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin not only wrote the songs and music for the show, but breaking with tradition, also gave himself a song to sing in the show as well. They performed the show for Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt and hung out with Eleanor at the after party at the White House. Stay tuned and hear more for yourself.
Well, another instance, this was somewhere in one of the Pacific Islands. And there we used to have audiences between 10 and 20,000. And the theater was the side of a mountain. And at the bottom of the mountain, they built a stage and dig a hole in front of the orchestra pit. The orchestra had 25 players. And one show, everybody's seating, ready for the show to start. We're in the pit, ready to start. And all of a sudden some sniping started. And there was a lot of excitement.
Because all you've got to protect yourself is a trombone.
Well, everybody's running in all directions through the pit, or where we were. I jumped out of the pit onto the stage to get out of the way, and the MPs quieted down. They got the source and everything. Everybody went back, sat down, waiting to see us show. And there's the orchestra pit full of all busted instruments. And what do you do with 10,000 guys sitting there waiting to see a show? You don't tell them to go home. We borrowed instruments from a local band, and we did the show.
So did your instrument get broken?
Sure.
How did it get, what got broken on it? Do you remember?
The slide.
Oh.
Well, the bell, it doesn't matter. You can have some dents, but the slide doesn't work with dents. Somewhere they had some instruments. I borrowed an instrument. And what I did, I used the slide from the instrument I borrowed. When I gave it back to them with the busted slide. And I still have that instrument, but it's just two different makes. It's a King slide and a Bach bell. Because I just put two together and they worked. And I used that for the rest of the tour.
That's a great story.
Yeah, but no, I still have the horn, and it's you don't see an instrument consisting of two different makes put together.
But it's a good story, so it's nice to keep it that way. You could say, well, this happened when I was under a sniper attack. And
oh yeah. And that's how I got it. Then it wasn't until long after World War II that I decided maybe I'll get another horn.
So how did you first start playing music? Did your family play music, or?
Okay, well, my father was a cantor, and he was a very fine musician. Not formally trained, but he had perfect pitch, and he could sit at the piano and accompany himself. And when I was 8 years old, I heard a violin play, and I said, I want to be a violinist. So I was a violinist until when I was 11, I went up to school to get a free violin lesson. That was the Depression years. And the teacher looked at me and said, hey, we got plenty of violins. And he came and brought me a baritone horn. You know, I left home with the violin, came home with a baritone horn. That started me on brass. And 1 year later, I wanted to play with the young bands around. So I got a trombone, which is very related to the baritone horn. It's the same register, and it's got a slide instead of the valves on the baritone horn. But once I got the baritone, I took lessons. I got with local bands, and I was in the music business as a little kid.
So you were getting gigs. Where was this?
We lived in East Orange, New Jersey at the time.
So you were doing paid gigs as a kid?
Well, when I was like 14, no, when I was about 14 or 15, the first time I got paid, I think a couple of friends and I, a piano player, a saxophone player, and me, we worked in a tavern Saturday nights for, I think it was $2.50. And this is Depression days, and I used to take my $2.50 and give it to my mother.
Oh.
But no, I started playing with, the high bands, the high school at high school level. And my first summer job when I was 15, I played at a resort in Long Island, in Edgemere, Long Island, with a young band. And then I got $8 a week, room and board. This was 1935. I was in the music business.
And how old were you?
At that time, I was 15. I graduated high school when I was 16.
So you were playing jazz that whole time?
I don't know if it was dance music.
And now how did you first meet Irving Berlin?
Well, now I'm going a few years further up the line. I was in the Army. I was going through basic training. I was stationed at Fort Dix. And I was out in the field. I had my rifle and bayonet and had on my helmet and, was playing soldier. Messenger comes from the front office that I should report back immediately. I go to the front office. They said, turn in your equipment. They gave me a train ticket to Camp Upton, Long Island. I was used to traveling for years before I got in the Army. It didn't matter to me. So I packed up my bag, and I had my trombone with me when I was drafted.
They let you bring your trombone out with your gun and training and...
Well, the thing is, when I was drafted, most guys bring their razor and toothbrush, and I carried a trombone with me. Because, prior to being in the Army, I had been on the road with bands all over the country. I mean, as a teenager. And I wouldn't go in the Army without it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go without my mandolin.
It's the same thing.
I'm just surprised they let you bring something that big.
I was supposed to be sent out to training in Oklahoma or wherever. And the band at Fort Dix heard I was drafted. It was an entertainment unit. Herbie Fields was the leader. They had me transferred to their unit. So from the very beginning, I was with an entertainment unit. So I had my horn with me, but I was using it. And where I left off my other story, I was given a train ticket to Camp Upton, Long Island. I had no idea what was going on. I get up there, and that's where I met Irving Berlin. And Ezra Stone, you may not have heard of him. But anyhow, they were putting together a show that was supposed to run 2 or 3 weeks. And they're putting together the show. We're going to play on Broadway for those 2 or 3 weeks. Those 2 or 3 weeks ran into 3.5 years. Because this was in May 1942. And after a short period, we moved the show into rehearsals into New York to the Broadway Theater on 51st on Broadway. And The show opened July 4th, 1942, and it was a big opening night with the usual lights and cameras and all the excitement of an opening show. It was a big hit, and it started getting extensions from the original 2 or 3 weeks. So we ended up, we were in we were in New York about 3 months. July, August, yeah. By the time we got to October, well, they had booked the show all over the country. And our first stop was Washington, D.C. And that was, of course, pretty exciting because the most important person of the country, Franklin Roosevelt, he came to see the show. And of course, he enjoyed it so much, he invited the whole cast to the White House the following night for a midnight supper.
Do you guys remember what you had?
No.
No.
I've got...
Did you talk to Eleanor Roosevelt?
Oh,
she
yes.
hung out with you guys more,
yes.
right? How was that?
Oh, hey, she's one of the people, right down to earth.
So she was funny, she kind of joked around, or was she pretty serious?
Well, it's not easy to remember 70 years back.
Right. Yeah, they just had the anniversary of, you just went to the White House again recently, right? When was that?
In October the 20th. And, the show, This Is the Army, had over 300 people in the outfit. That included actors, dancers, singers, business people, musicians, and so forth. Out of the whole cast, I don't know of anybody else who is still around.
You're the last one?
Well, I won't use those words.
Right.
But I was perhaps one of the youngest in the outfit anyhow.
Do you remember when you first met Irving Berlin? Was it just like a handshake, or was he actually performing? How did you guys first start to play music together?
Well, he was pretty much a business person, and being part of the orchestra, I did not have any, real warm contacts with him. The only time I was really close with him, aside from the big show with the full cast, in our travels, we would go with small groups around to hospital wards. And I was part of this small group, would be some singers or some musicians, a few guys. And there were 3 trombones, but I played first chair. But no, I mean, as I say,
That must have been really rewarding, going into the hospitals and playing for the guys and gals.
I think I remember one show, a guy passed away while we were playing. We didn't stop.
Did he pass away? I mean, was it quiet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you first meet Jack Teagarden? Because you also toured with him, right?
Yes.
How long did you tour with him too?
I was with him about 2 years. And this was also a teenager. I forgot what it was, about 19 or so. And I had joined Local 802, that's the New York Musicians Union, when I was 18. I came into New York and I wanted to play with the big bands, and I played with a number of bands, around New York. I'd done traveling, nothing of any significance. I played at the first rehearsal with Glenn Miller, but I chose not to go with the band because I was getting in Local 802, establishing residence, and I didn't want to go on the road. And this was another new band. I said, all right, I'll get the next one. And boy, was I sorry after a short period.
So you never got another opportunity to go out with the Glenn Miller band, huh?
My other opportunity was when he was in the military, and he had his Air Force band. We had just finished making our movie, This is the Army at Warner Brothers. And he tried to get a couple of us guys to join his Air Force band, but we were booked to go overseas. They wouldn't let any of us go. So that was the second time I turned them down.
Okay, now Jack Teagarden, I think, had a technique that a lot of other people haven't done, as far as I know anyway, where he removed the bell of his trombone and used a wine glass to resonate the buzz off the pipe. Can you demonstrate that? How did that happen, or did you ever learn how to do that?
I never even tried to do it. I suppose I could.
Has anyone else, or is that?
Yeah, no, it's possible.
It's been done.
Yeah.
So did you come up with any fun sort of tricks or techniques, things like that ever?
I like the sound of the horn.
Right.
I like melody.
Right.
And those are my, and
so when would he do that trick thing with the wine glass? Was it on gigs? Would he do it?
Yeah. He could have done it maybe during a stage show or something where everybody was looking in on him.
Right.
Yeah, I'm surprised you came up with that. I haven't thought of that in years. Yeah.
Well, I did a little bit of research.
Yeah, no, I'm really impressed. I suppose I could do it. All he does, he holds a slide, and the glass is over the.
You want to take? Can you use the? Can you show us on the trombone so I can visualize? I'm a mandolin player. Here,
I never even imagined doing it.
Well, we could try just to explain it. Maybe it'd be fun to have you explain a little bit about.
And to play a tune.
Another question is, I think on This Is the Army, was Ronald Reagan on that too?
Yeah, well, he was in the movie.
Right. Did you ever hang out with him at all?
No, never hung out. No.
What was he like to have on the set? Was he interesting, difficult?
He was strictly the movie actor that he was.
Hmm.
You know, there was never any association with him.
So he didn't go on the road with you guys or anything?
No. When we finished the movie, he was part of the outfit for 4 or 5 months. When we finished the movie, he chose to stay in the movies, and we chose. Now we didn't choose, but we ended up going overseas.
So that was his first movie then?
That wasn't his first movie. No.
Oh, okay.
No, he made movies before the war. As a matter of fact, this is a for real story. Irving Berlin didn't know much, never heard of Ronald Reagan before the movie. So one day he goes over to Reagan. He says, "You know, young man, you seem to have a lot of talent. You ought to consider a career in the movies after the war." Meanwhile, Reagan had made about a dozen movies, and Reagan was offended.
I heard a rumor there was someone that said something. Irving Berlin actually sang in This Is the Army, right?
Oh yeah.
How was his singing?
There's a famous story. Well, he wasn't a real singer, but it was satisfactory. When he came on stage, it brought the house down. Before then, he would start singing, "I've been a soldier quite a while, and I would like to state, the Army food is wonderful, the Army life is great. I sleep in a wood hut with 97 other men. I love them all, they all love me, everything's lovely, but oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Oh, how I love to remain in bed." And when he would sing that chorus, it would bring the house down.
Well, there was some story that you told at some point.
Oh yeah, when he was making the movie, you know, as I say, he did not have a big voice. And one of the stage hands says, "You know, if the guy who wrote that song heard that man sing it, he'd turn over in his grave." And Berlin heard that, and he got a big laugh out of it, and I believe he repeated it a number of times.
Yeah. So Irving Berlin was pretty good sense of humor about
Oh
stuff.
yeah. But one of came to business and doing the show. He was a businessman.
So what I've read, I think your unit, your Army unit, the entertainment unit, was the first racially integrated, or at least one of the first military units that was racially integrated. Were there any stories from that, or any issues that happened as you were traveling?
Well, you know, this was during the time when there was no integration. The military had separate units for white and separate units for the African Americans. When we put the show together, there was a part of the show that had we call it the Harlem number, and we had I guess about 20 black guys in the outfit. And when we were traveling, say if we get to a camp, with Army camp, and say the white fellows go here and the colored fellows go here, and our officers told them our instructions are we don't separate. So the whole outfit ended up in the colored section of the camp.
And that happened a lot of times?
It happened. I can't say a lot or few, but it happened whenever necessary. But and we all were so pleased that we could do that.
And was that also when you're traveling overseas? Was it more of a problem, or was it more of a problem in the U.S.?
Well, it was never a problem.
Or more of an issue for the people having the separate quarters?
Wherever. Well, then see, we also travel on crowded troop ships, you know, where they'd have 10, 15,000 troops. And to get in the chow line, they'd make sure that the black guys, that they would mix in with members of our outfit, just so as not to cause any, big commotion, if there was a potential for it. But we were aware of the, of course, of the issue. But again, as I said, we were very proud, very pleased, and like I remember over in Italy, there was one of the black units. They had black officers, and they came over and met with us. And were, they were so pleased to see what we were doing.
So, what was it like working at the Warner Studios? I think your director was like Michael Curtis, who did a lot of really famous films, and he did Casablanca, I think. Wasn't that the one he just finished making Casablanca before he made the one you did, right?
He was the director.
What was he like to work with? And also, I'm just trying to imagine what it was like working on one of those, because I think you had to record the music in a studio, right? And then they danced and sang for the cameras.
No, it was done by regular studio orchestra. Mike Curtis was the director, but a lot of the directing was done by members of the cast who were really the director of the show, like Bob Sidney, and there was John Koenig was one of the officers. He had a lot to do. I mean, these are people who had been in show business before the war. They were experienced. They know what we were doing and what we had to do.
And they were all Army officers at that point. Everyone was
not necessarily officers.
Some of them were.
Bob Sidney was the sergeant.
Oh, I mean, they were Army.
They're Army. I mean, John Koenig was a lieutenant. I mean, I happen to think of his name offhand, but.
So when you had, I would assume you have a lot of time when they're shooting one scene where, you have a lot of just sitting around time, from what I hear from most movies, even the little one I did. Were you guys jamming during that time? Were you allowed to take other gigs in the area if you didn't have to shoot for a few days, or what was it like?
They built an Army camp on the Warner Brothers lot. And when we were not shooting the film, we were in the camp doing soldier things.
Like just drills and gun.
And there are a lot of times we're on the set where we were waiting to go on, or there's when you make a movie, there's a lot of sitting around, and then you go out of your mind just hanging in. You do what you got to do.
Right.
This was part of our...
Right. You weren't allowed to take any local gigging or anything, right? Or were you?
No. We didn't know, never even... If anybody did anything like that, I didn't know about it. And hey, look, these are some very, very fine players that were, you know...
I heard a story that one time when you were out there in Hollywood, you were hitchhiking and you were picked up and given a ride by Ingrid Bergman. Is that true?
Well, it wasn't me personally.
Oh, it wasn't you personally?
No, it could have been somebody else, because the way our schedule was, we had reveille in the morning at 6 or 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock maybe. And we had retreat at night, after our full day at the studio. We'd have formation where everybody was there. And then we were dismissed. As I said, we had the camp where our accommodations were there. It was a regular Army camp they built on the Warner Brothers lot.
Like in tents and stuff?
With tents. They had orderly room, they had medical unit. But they didn't make us live in there. So we all went and got apartments in town. And of course those days were a lot cheaper than today. But when we were dismissed at night, we would run out to the highway, put up our thumb, and people in those days see a GI with a uniform, they always picked us up. It was never a problem. And in town, we especially if we're free evenings, we enjoyed being in town. In Hollywood and all, whatever was going on.
Going out for the nightlife and clubs and...
Well, but you had to be aware. You had to get up early to get out to camp for reveille.
Right.
Because in the morning we'd grab what we did, we'd grab a hitch out. It was the Cahuenga and Hollywood Boulevard where they had buses. that would take, we'd get a hitch out to that corner, and the bus would take us out to the studio to make sure we got there in time. I don't know why I happen to remember it.
So the film that you were in ended up getting an Oscar. Is that right? How did you guys feel about that, or did that affect your career after that, being in an Oscar award-winning film?
I don't think so. Everybody was still whatever he did or became based on his own ability.
So did you ever meet any royal families when you were touring?
Did you see the movie, The King's Speech?
I've wanted to, but I have not seen it yet. But I've heard of it. It's supposed to be great.
I went to see the movie, a couple of months ago. It was at it takes place at the theater in London. So I'm looking at the movie. I said, "My gosh, I was there." It's all about the King's speech impediment and the Queen doing all the talking. Well, we were playing London at the Palladium Theater. And I remember after one show, Irving Berlin is changing out of his World War I uniform that he sings, "Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning." And the usher comes back, "Mr. Berlin, the royal family coming backstage to see you." I was there when he said it. So the whole cast forms on stage. That's what we usually did for important visitors. But and here comes the king, the queen, and the two teenage daughters, the present queen. And she's doing the talking, thanking us for bringing the show to London, entertaining the troops and all the, the usual chatter. And I'm looking there, this big handsome guy, he's not saying a word. I said, "What's with him?" And it wasn't until much later I found out, weeks later, the poor guy had the speech impediment. But when I saw the movie, I said, I was there at that. Wherever we went, anybody of any importance came to see us. King Farouk with his concubine, he was sitting right opposite me in his box.
And did they actually talk to you guys? Did you?
No, not Egypt, no. But every important general came to see the show, except MacArthur. He's the only one that I think never came to see the show.
He wasn't much of a theater goer.
No, didn't miss him.
When you guys were traveling in these different countries, did you guys ever have any cultural confusions or language problems that you can recall?
Well, I'll tell you, I met a lot of people in Italy, and I was invited home to their homes to dinner, and knowing that they didn't have much food because it was rationing, I always carried more food than I walked away with. I always would pick up from, our area.
You have a PX or something?
Yeah. And I always would leave more cans of food than I could possibly eat.
So when you were traveling, did you get to meet other musicians, like in Egypt or Iran or any place like that, and play with other musicians, different places?
Well, I met other musicians, like, in Italy, we played at the Opera House, so I got to know, especially the trombone players in the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Professore, damn, I forgot his name. But I became pretty friendly with some of those guys.
Did you ever come across any really odd instruments you'd never seen before?
Any what?
Any odd instruments? Some of those places like Egypt and Iran and stuff, they probably have some pretty crazy looking instruments. You didn't probably have enough time to get out.
We were in India. And I was with a friend of mine, a violinist from the Bronx, Joe Schifrin. And we were walking along, and we met this guy, and it turned out he's a local fellow who's a violinist. Oh, how interesting. Then it turns out he's also Jewish. He's an Indian fellow. He's an Indian Jew.
Interesting.
So he wants to invite us up to his house to meet his mother. Oh, how nice. Meet a nice Jewish mama in Bombay, India. Sounds interesting. Yeah, let's go. So we go there, and we get up this house. There his mother's sitting smoking a water pipe, sitting barefoot. The hubbly bubbly thing. She's the Jewish mother.
Is it like a bong? Is that what we'd call them now?
No, don't you ever see the water pipe they smoke?
Is it long? It goes down.
Yeah.
I think they call them bongs
tube,
now.
It's got water.
They use them for tobacco in South Asia.
Yeah.
Hubble bubble is what.
Yeah, so that's what I say. This Jewish mama, she's smoking the water pipe, and he's the violinist, so he's going to play. Oh, well, here's.
So she's smoking tobacco in it.
Yeah, I don't know what she had in it, but it was just it was not what we expected. Then he takes out his violin. He's going to play. Oh, well, he'll play some nice hometown music. Takes out his violin, starts playing some Indian music, with the different scale they use. Mm-hmm. We figure enough of this and this stuff we cut out.
So when you were playing places like India and Iran and all these places, I bet you played some pretty amazing venues, some palaces, where's the most memorable kind of places that you played? Did you ever play, I don't know, on ships or in palaces or?
Well, I'll give you an example. Santa Maria di Capua, Italy. We were playing there. That was right close to the lines because there was a big bottleneck in Italy before we broke through up into Rome. So and they would bring troops there every day to see the show at the theater. And we were there for, I don't know, a number of weeks or whatever. One day, I used to go to the theater every morning and practice. So one day I'm coming out and the other MP's at the door. Hey, what are you doing here? Go away, go. It so happens a cleaning guy who found it was a booby trap. It was all set to go off when the house was full.
So I guess security was a big issue as you traveled then.
Oh, all the time.
You're in a war. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there's stories.
Like
So
what?
on this one, just to finish it, and they would bring troops in truckloads, to see the show. So I mean, they couldn't send them away. So we went out into the park, and they set up an area for a show, and we improvised a show in the park. When they brought in all the troops.
Have you ever worked any day jobs, any non-music related jobs?
I worked for IRS.
Okay. What did you do with the IRS?
Agent.
Oh, okay.
No, after the war, the GI Bill. I got my degree in accounting. I went to Rutgers University because I was afraid to depend on music for a livelihood. During the early years, I mean, I always worked, but music business changes. I majored in accounting. I worked at it. I'm originally from New Jersey, and one day I was passing through Washington, and I ended up with IRS.
So how many years were you an IRS agent?
Almost 30 years.
That's great.
But
Good retirement.
Yeah, but I never stopped blowing my horn. Because all the time I was with them, I had permission to work on the outside. So I did everything, the ice show, the circus, I played every inaugural.
So you played the inaugural with the Army band? Or
No, they use regular civilian groups at the
Oh, okay.
inaugural.
So when you went to the White House for the 70th year anniversary of when you were there, I think I read that you signed some board.
Oh, well, what happened was we had a tour, a special tour of the White House. Then we went over to the National Theater. And as a matter of fact, they gave me a horn, and I just, sang "This is the Army" and did a few little things for them. And then they led me down to a place, I guess near the box office, where all the famous performers like Helen Hayes and so forth had signed the wall. And asked me to sign the wall. I said, I'm only a trombone player. Oh, no, they want me to sign the wall. My signature's on the wall at the National Theater.
That's fun. And did you date it when you performed there? Or?
Yeah, well, when I performed there, it was October 1942. Now, we had this get-together in October 2012,
Mm-hmm.
70 years later.
Did you get to meet President Obama or Michelle Obama?
I've met him, but not on that occasion.
So how do you feel about the way jazz and music have changed over the years? Any opinions on any of that?
All I say is everybody's entitled to his or her own taste. I mean, I've been used to music throughout the 40s, jazz, what it was. I've heard I've heard and worked with the best players,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't plan to change my preferences.
So
What the young people do today, they enjoy. Good for them.
on
This
this
is
photo.
This is the Jack T. Garden Band,
Uh-huh.
1939.
And are you in this picture?
Yeah, I was 19 years old. That's me right here.
Uh-huh. And where is this taken?
This is Jack. Here, the Southland Restaurant in Boston. 1940. All right.
Cool. And then here, maybe I'll just put this up so we can get a good close up on the camera.
Now this is the original. That's Irving Berlin and me. That was taken in Italy while we were traveling there.
Mm-hmm.
This is a letter he wrote home to my mother, to my parents actually. Giving them some reassurance.
Do you want to
It's got my that's my original name, Goldfinger. My name was changed along the way.
Was that for show business?
No, my brother decided to change, just for business purposes and just a lot easier to handle. So he asked the rest of us. I had 2 brothers and a sister, and the rest of us, for consistency, you all want to go along on the same court order. I was doing homework. When I was going to college. I said, all right, put me down.
So the whole family changed from Goldfinger
Just
to Green.
Just my other brother, my sister, the 4 of us. And of course, my sister got married. She changed it again. But people who know me from playing with the big bands or from the Army or whatever, they know me as Goldfinger.
So this letter is from who?
That letter is the original letter from Irving Berlin. And that's his signature.
Mr. and Mrs. Goldfinger, 137 Bailey Avenue, Hillside, New Jersey. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Goldfinger, I returned from the Pacific this week after playing for 3.5 months with This Is the Army. This letter is to say that I left Seymour in fine spirits and excellent health. No doubt he has written you about our great success in New Guinea and the Philippines. We played to the most enthusiastic audiences ranging from 5,000 to 16,000 a performance, and received many letters of commendation from the different bases where we showed. The show continues on its mission, and I am sure Seymour will write you all the news from time to time. This part of our tour has been, and I know will continue to be, the most interesting and exciting. As you probably know, the boys are living on a ship where life is not too rugged. Of course, they are all very homesick, which is natural. I told Seymour I was going to write you, and he wanted me to give you his love. With my very best wishes, sincerely. And then, what's his? I guess that says Irving Berlin. It's
That's
really
right.
hard to read his writing.
But
Looks
that's
like
what-
scribble Berlin.
That's his stationery.
That's his signature. I've never seen his real signature, so that's pretty cool.
Well, that's the
Kind of
original.
looks like a Jerry.
No, that's the original letter.
Okay, and then here, can you tell us what is in this box here for the camera?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, these are my original dog tags, which I got in January 1942 when I was drafted in the Army.
Okay.
This is my discharge. And this shows my Army record. And goes into detail. I don't know if I can read it in the dark here. You read it.
Okay. Let's see, what does it say?
These are a list of all the places.
That's your honorable discharge, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, Southern Philippines. I guess it talks about where you've been. American Service Medal, Asiatic Pacific Service Medal, Victory Medal. You got lots of medals.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of medals.
But those were that shows we circled the globe.
And you get a total amount of $189 with your discharge.
That's after 4 years.
Thank
in
you
the
very
military.
much. You have many medals and accommodations and achievements. Will give you $189, and you are discharged. And 14 cents.
And get out and stay out.
And get out and stay.
Don't come back.